Hello.
Welcome to the stream, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. Hello. Hello.
Sarah, welcome back.
Thank you, Asa. Thank you so much. For those of you who don't know, I was on medical leave getting my back operated on. But if you'll notice, if you're a regular watcher of our streams, if you're a regular participant, I'm usually like sitting over on the floor, like in the corner over there. Today, I'm in a chair. I'm sitting upright, and I'm very hopeful and very excited. So thank you.
That's amazing. That's
Thank you.
amazing. If you are not a regular, welcome. This is Science Fiction Story Club. I'm
It
Asa.
is.
You know Sarah already. The two of us together are working our way through this anthology. We are writers and we are reading one short story a week from this collection, talking about them, analyzing them, engaging with them as writers, taking what we can learn, sharing them with you all. There is a rich community. Welcome, Fly Moo, too. Lots of writers here, and we love to hear from you, per always.
Yes.
So if you're in the stream, let us know what you think and what you thought of this story, and please, this is a discourse, a discussion. So we'd love to hear from you as we read. Right. So the story today, Sarah, it's called "The Fate of Poseidonia." This is by a writer named Claire Winger Harris. Jeff Vandermeer of the Southern Reach trilogy identifies Miss Harris as one of the early women sci-fi writers, a pioneer in the field. Sarah, we decided that we're not going to insanely summarize these
No.
stories, but this is about a man who meets another man who he doesn't like, and it turns
Mhm.
out that this is a Martian, a person from
Yes.
Mars on Earth. The story slowly reveals that, and we find out that there is a takeover of sorts happening from Mars. That's the basic gist. So
hmm
before we get into this, people are still coming into the streams. I am so curious, Sarah, before we start talking about the story, how's the writing going?
Oh man, how is the writing going? The writing is I had a okay. We say that resting is part of writing. We say that. Do we believe it? I'm a little bit of a hypocrite in that area. I'm always telling other writers, like, yes, you should be resting. It's good for you. You will write better when you come back. Do I believe it? No, because I'm terrified, like many of us are. I'm terrified that if I take a break, then I'll come back and I'll be terrible, or I won't come back at all. But uh, because of medical stuff going on, I had to take some time off and I took a few days off of writing. And then yesterday and then this morning, I just like had a monsoon of like story rush through me. And so I can tell you, and maybe, I've come to this conclusion before. I think I will continue to come to this conclusion. I will continue to learn this lesson that yes, taking time off from writing is healthy. It's good. It lets you, it refreshes you. It lets you see your work with new perspective. Um, so I have to tell you, the writing this week is good. How about you?
I love that. I so appreciate that perspective. I see that warm tea. I see that smile. I'm here for it, Sarah. I'm so glad and impressed that so quickly after such a serious, uh, health moment that you've been able to produce. It's going great for me. If you're new to the stream, another thing Sarah and I do, or we do some live streaming, live writing on Fridays. Last week, Sarah was out, but we kept going and we did a Halloween origin story exercise. So I have furiously been working on that story, and I made a submission deadline last week. Congrats to everyone here who also did that. So I'm feeling it. It was fun. It was light. It was loose, and I finished something and submitted it. Which, at the end of the day, that's such an achievement. I'm not even happy with the story. I really, truly ran out of time. It was one
Oh,
of these
I've done that.
it has typos. It has like the jack-o'-lantern. One of the O's is a zero, and this is sent. So, but it's like the thing is, it was sent. So I feel
Maybe they'll think it was like, intentional,
right.
and
Yeah,
they'll like
style.
spend hours like puzzling over like, oh, it's some kind of cryptogram and we've got to solve it for Halloween. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe so. Where do we start with this story, Sarah? What'd you make of this? What was your experience as a reader? Before we like kind of
Yeah.
discussed it, book club it, what was your emotional experience reading this?
Ooh. I had an emotional experience reading this, and it was an interesting one. So I'm a big fan of the sort of writer intention um school of literary analysis, not to get too like academic because we don't really do that here. We kind of just more rely on vibes, but there's a lot of different ways to read things. And I always enjoy looking at things from what did the author really mean by this? What were they trying to convey? What were they trying to do? What were they trying to accomplish? I mean, in addition to writing and finishing a story and hopefully submitting it before the deadline. Um, and so this is this is not the first science fiction piece by a female writer that we've read. We read Sultana's Dream earlier. If you want to go back a few episodes, maybe more than a few episodes, we've read some science fiction by women, but this is as Asa pointed out in the introduction. Anne and Jeff Vandermeer really make a point of telling us a lot about why this is important that this particular story was written by a woman. And so this was not this story, but Claire Winger Harris was the first woman to be published in Weird Tales, which, again, if you've been following us for the last several weeks, we've talked about Weird Tales a lot because it was sort of the initial science fiction magazine of the time. This is really what established American tastes in science fiction. So it's a very important publication. Really, what I got out of this were a few things. So the Vandermeers have this wonderful about the author thing. She seems to be an underdog. We'll just put it that way. But I had a question about a few of the things going on here. Hugo Gernsback, who created Amazing Stories, where I believe it was this one that won the third place?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hugo Gernsback, creator of the Hugo Awards, I'm just going to read a little sentence here, said that as a rule, women do not make good science-fiction. I guess that's one thing you can call it, science fiction writers, because their education and general tendencies on scientific matters are usually limited. But the exception, as usual, proves the rule. The exception in this case being extraordinarily impressive. So this is Gernsback again talking about this piece by Claire Winger Harris. He also noted it has a great deal of charm because it is not overburdened with science. Later, this introduction also says that the reason Claire became a writer was she was inspired by her father. Other people have given credit to her husband, who was an engineer and an architect. So I had a lot, like even just in the introduction here, it's like, okay, yes, science fiction. We discussed this even in our earlier episodes of Speculative Fiction Story Club, not super open to women. And just because of, prejudices of the day. But it really struck me that even in this introduction, with all of the social awareness, that Jeff and Anne Vandermeer still say Winger may have been inspired by her father, who wrote a novel once and never published it, or we can give credit to her husband, who was an engineer and architect. Is that tongue in cheek? Do you know, like, can we not give credit to Claire for wanting to write a story? Does her husband
not read it as tongue in cheek? I did not, unfortunately. I think
does her husband need credit for her short story writing? Sorry, this is not the point.
Yeah, you would not see this in a man. It's like, Jacob Richards.
Yeah.
Some say he was inspired by his dad's failed novel, and others because his wife was an architect. That's why he became a science fiction writer.
Like, okay.
I think you're right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't want to this is not going to be our whole conversation, but I thought it was just very interesting. They're calling out and praising this author for sort of doing something new and daring, and then sort of diminishing her success by spreading out credit, and I don't know, it felt a little weird. And I know that Anna and Jeff Vandermeer are very socially conscious, so maybe I'm missing a joke. Um, one other thing, I promise I will not derail us too much. It also says that the story, The Fate of the Poseidonia, features a female lead. And I put
Okay,
a
I had the
question
same
mark next to
experience. I
that.
had the same
Okay.
experience. Yes. I was like, no, it doesn't.
No,
It
it
has
doesn't.
a extremely flat, one-dimensional female character.
With like 8 lines.
Yeah. So, right. I think
Okay.
it's wishful thinking here. I think there's a degree of tokenism happening. I credit the Vandermeers for the inclusivity of this
Yes.
collection, but I do feel the way that this writer is presented in this intro, it's limiting.
It's weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's not even bland. It like stands out,
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
so okay. So the reason you asked me how I felt about this story, the reason that I went into this whole thing about the intro is that them saying that the story features a female lead. Diving into the story, since it's first person narrator, so it's in first person, I assumed going in that this was a woman speaking. And like when we got to this part where Professor Stearns is greeting the narrator as Mr. Gregory, I was like, what? And I had to go back and reread that whole intro, that whole beginning, and revise. And I was like, reading it, with a female main character, it was very interesting, because the very first sentence is a little bit catty. Like,
You want to read us the first
I
sentence?
do. Okay.
Yeah.
So this short story is divided into chapters. This is the beginning of chapter 1. The first moment I laid eyes on Martel, I took a great dislike to the man. There sprang up between us an antagonism that, as far as he was concerned, might have remained passive, but which circumstances forced into activity on my side. So this is the meeting of two people, Martel, and we eventually learn George Gregory. I have so many questions about George Gregory. There's so much going on in this story. But there's an immediate dislike between two characters, which I think that's a great, compelling way to start a story. 60 Hangers, hi. 60 Hangers says, I thought it was a woman also.
Y'all, this is why
Yeah.
you can't be reading this intro beforehand.
No, I got to read the intro last. Is that what you were doing?
I
Were you
always read
reading?
the intro last.
See, that's smart. Yeah, so then that would have thrown you for a loop. Like, wait, what? Was this a
Yeah.
female lead? Mr. George Gregory? Like, and then is that saying something? I don't know. But yeah.
Right.
Our intro here is about two people who just take an instant dislike to each other, or
Well,
one
person. I'm gonna jump to
Yeah.
It's I think it's important that it's unilateral here. It's like,
Okay.
narrator does not like dude, although he perceives that Martel does not like him, but we really don't know.
Right.
That's been a really consistent insight. Is like,
Yeah.
that's what they say. We only get one side of the story here.
Yeah. We get one side, and boy, is it one-sided. Like, it is it's such a masterful, like, if you take a step back and look at how Claire Winger Harris builds this character and all of his little quirks, and how you get an understanding of the person, that he's not the person he thinks or says he is. Like, she creates this, not only the character of George Gregory, but also this, like, I don't know, image that George Gregory has of himself as this, like, pursuer of justice and savior of damsels in distress. And really, he's like, I went back through the story. I can't even find out, like, what does he do for a living?
Well, I mean, he's invited to the homes of scientists.
Mm-hmm.
I think we know that, but do we know anything else?
Mm-mm.
He seems to have a lot of free time.
He has a lot of free
He
time.
seems available.
Yeah. Well, and then I noticed later, spoiler alert, he gets locked in a mental facility, in a mental institution. Literally no one, like, he has no one to talk to. He doesn't have a mother, a father. He doesn't have a friend. He has no one. And I think this is really significant, and it's something I didn't understand about his character until that chapter 5 section when he's in the mental institution and he finally thinks of someone to call, and it's literally the one other character we've seen him interact with just at a chance meeting, who he sees maybe once every few years, and it's Professor Stearns. And he's like, "There is one person on this planet who can vouch for me, and it is this guy." Like,
Yes.
this is such an interesting character. Okay, I have talked
Yeah.
so much. I wanna hear your thoughts.
Okay. Well, I this might be my least favorite story so far.
I
It
get it.
might be my
Yeah.
least so far, and here's like we've had other stories that were as we read them, they were confusing. They were abstract, they were theoretical. We had another story, everybody, if you missed this one, where there were actual mathematical
Oh, yeah.
equations. There was an entire scene. I have been confused many times while working my way through this story collection. I feel like this was the first time that I experienced uh, the first word that's coming to mind is boredom, but I don't know if that's it.
Mm.
I felt ahead of the story often. And so not only was everything clear, it was too clear. And I was
Mm.
just like, okay, I get it. I get it. I can see you setting this up as to be like, and then it's going to be revealed that, but I've already got that. So what are we doing here? So I had a challenging reading experience. I do think that I was kind of like with the writer hat on, and I do my best to kind of
Yes.
engage with a story without that on, at least being able to put the reader hat just to kind of let it happen to me as a person.
Yeah.
But I couldn't shake that. And so because it just felt telegraphed. And I think that is a feeling that a non-writer knows, whether it's
Yeah.
in a movie or a book, it's like, I know what's going to happen. So that was my experience here.
Right. So I'm very curious because I had a little bit of a similar experience, and the story itself, it felt like a lesser version of a Ray Bradbury Martian Chronicles story, in a way. But going back through it, I was very interested in how the author builds up the characters and who they are and like why they do what they do. That aside though, looking at this as like a science fiction novel that's supposed to like astound us. Well, maybe not astound, but it has its own flavor. Um it didn't strike you in a way that you said you felt like you were ahead of the story. And I know this is a concept writing wise. Um, do you think that that is because that a lot of the ideas in here have become just like science fiction
I think that's
tropes?
totally possible.
Is
Yeah, I
that
mean,
it? Or
right. I mean, it's like this story is 100 years old, and it's like maybe hundreds of stories have built off of some of the basic ideas of this. I mean, there is an this idea of Mars being populated, Mars having a water crisis, someone coming from Mars to Earth to surreptitiously infiltrate and get water and bring it back. All that's compelling.
yes.
You know what I mean? So maybe there's something about the execution of it, or maybe, like maybe you just were so much more primed to engage and imagine a story like that, having now that we're 100 years later, having consumed so many incredible sci-fi tales the tradition has built on itself. But I think that's totally plausible that, this is like second wave of sci-fi, it's like whatever it is. It's like Jules Verne is the beginning or whatever. And then, I mean, this is early days. So I do think that that's
Yeah.
totally plausible.
And
So
yeah.
yeah, Lore Huntress, welcome. Lore Hunter says it seemed a bit longer than it needed to be, but of course it was probably more exciting at the time. Very well could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this came out, I had to look this up. This came out more than 20 years before Ray Bradbury published The Martian Chronicles.
Okay.
So this was ahead of, and when I say, oh, it feels like a lesser, a paler imitation of that book, well, really, it came first and maybe it was an inspiration in some ways. But yeah, Lore says it seemed a lot longer than it needed to be. Um, that was what really got me curious in like a dissecting the story kind of way is why everything that's in here needs to be here. What we have, and please correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm off base, when I step away from this story, what I see is a love triangle.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a beating heart, a romantic beating heart. And I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, you can make the case that that is what drives at least half of what our speaker narrators
Yes.
does, is
Yes.
that
And
that jealousy drives what he does.
yeah, and it's looking at like the movement in the story. Oh, he's sneaking into Martell's room. He's looking at his secret misty futuristic television. Um and he's doing it because he's in a love triangle. He's convinced he's in the right. He's convinced what he really wants to do is just get rid of Martell, and he can't face the fact that he has just this really base motive. And so he's like, "Yes, I'm doing it for justice and
I
for
think that's a great
truth."
observation because okay, like my big frustration, I put a note. So on this story starts, by the way, so this is like a 20-ish page
It
story,
is long. It is long.
15-ish page. And the story starts on page 63. At the top of 64, I wrote down, "Here I suspect Martian." To
Oh,
just to flag, like when I was like, okay,
uh-huh.
this is where I think it is. The character doesn't think it until, I mean, we're way late in the story before he puts it together.
Yeah.
So I think it's like explicit that what drives him up until that moment is only this love interest, right? Because he doesn't even realize what's going on. He doesn't even have the excuse of like, this is a threat to humankind. He doesn't even have that till later in the story because he doesn't think,
Right.
he doesn't put the pieces together.
So I think to that, I think it's really interesting to think about what audiences of the time would have thought. Like, would they immediately have thought like, would they have put the pieces together? Because there's puzzle pieces that are laid out here for us. Like they're at a lecture explicitly about Mars, and Martell is here, and he's a weird looking guy, and his skin isn't quite right, and he's wearing a hat in a weird way. Like modern audiences would put one and one together and say Martian would, and maybe I need to give audiences of the time more credit. Would people in 1927 reading the story say, "This is a Martian," and then is the reason is an important part of the story the fact that I always forget his name because it's alliterative. George Gregory, Mr. George Gregory, is not getting this. Is that part of the point of the story? Like, would
Mm-hmm.
audiences in 1927 be just as frustrated with this idiot who has such an inflated sense of self-worth? And I wonder I wonder where a lot of the story is, if that makes any sense. I wonder if a lot of the story is supposed to be in us getting
I don't
frustrated at
I don't
George
think so.
Gregory.
I
No?
don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think it works. I don't think this story lasts the test of time if that's the
Mm,
case. I think it I'm curious. This is where this is an ongoing education for us. This is where I'm
yeah.
curious. Like, when in literature do we get the first depictions of extraterrestrials? Right? Not so much monsters, but aliens, like humanoid forms on Earth that are from other planets.
Ooh.
And maybe we don't get them that much earlier than this. Maybe this is kind of early, and in that case, this becomes wonderfully novel. I mean, that's like such an act of imagination.
Hmm. I just had to be very rude and
Yeah.
look something up. So I
No, yeah.
looked
What'd
up
you find?
Martian Chronicles, published in 1950, and then I had to look up The Caves of Steel, which is one of my absolute favorite early sci-fi novels, 1953. So this is a
Yeah.
good
A
20,
generation.
25 years before both of those. And in both of those, Martians are depicted as humanoid. They're just people. In this case, in The Fate of the Poseidonia, the Martians are, and I think, gosh, this is what makes me think that there's more going on here than I'm giving it credit for. Like not only George Gregory's like inflated sense of self and insistent that he is right, but also the depiction of the people of Mars who are in a, let's call it a climate crisis.
Yeah.
They are depicted as, and I'm going to read verbatim. I underlined it. Let's see, who appeared, let's see, bore a general resemblance to an Indian chief. From his forehead, tall white feathers stood erect. He was without clothing, and his skin had a reddish cast that glistened with a coppery sheen in the sunlight. And so, this is a description of the Martians. And they are living on a planet that's in a climate crisis. They are harvesting resources from Earth, or it is actually not called Earth in the story, it is called Terra. Um, and I'm wondering if there's something going on here, or if I'm reading way too deep into it with, colonials like plundering, like if this is a way for, I don't know, a Native American analog to like get back at like colonial natural resource plundering.
I mean, yeah,
I don't know.
maybe. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I do think that, you know, going for the most, like giving a text the benefit of the doubt, going for the most generous, ambitious version of the story possible, I think it's like appropriate and useful for this story club for sure. But I don't know. I mean, it just feels like a shorthand for like
Hmm.
same but different, in the same way
Yeah.
that like, Native Americans were rendered as like savages by white settlers. They were still like humans. Similarly, it's like these are totally different, but they're still like us, kind of. I don't know. To me, it felt like that, just kind of
Yeah.
like a shorthand. It didn't seem like she was interested in saying too much about that. It's totally possible, but I think that. I mean, yeah, I think what could have been like really amazing is that they come down in costume, in that the feathers are hidden. There's this like sense of concealment, and Martel has learned the basic functioning of like human society. He can show up. He's very put together in this Q&A. He asks the right questions.
Yeah. And he cut his
So
feathers off.
that's interesting. I mean, and again, all this is like so foundational. I mean, we've seen so many interesting stories of folks coming down from above and like spine. I read a really good Stephen Graham Jones story with that exact setup. That's a great setup. Yeah, can add
I'm a
that to
big
the
fan.
list.
Sorry. I'm
Yeah, but I mean, let's dig in, because I would love help figuring out the more. There is more to this story, and I'm committed to finding that more. What is it?
well,
I mean, the guy. Yeah, okay, yeah. Go ahead.
and on the other side, how much of the story am I giving credit for because I am way reading into things too much and I'm putting things in that aren't actually there? So I think that there's going to be maybe a balance between what we're seeing here. I'm so eager for this, like, for this author to have done something really cool. But at the same time, maybe it's just a story that hasn't held up. And maybe I'm just like trying to put too much like into it that isn't
Yeah,
there.
I think
So
yeah, I think that's important that we definitely give ourselves permission to be like, nah, this isn't for me.
little meh. We do have a
Um,
comment from Laura that came in.
oh, great. You want to read it for us?
Yeah, Laura says the ending reminded me of stories of indigenous people kidnapping settler women. That I had the same thought, Laura. I feel like we read things in a very similar way. I wonder if it was supposed to connect to that.
I mean,
That
that's
was,
that's sick. I don't know of those stories. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, do
yeah.
we think that she survives? Just so folks have
Oh,
a
yeah.
sense of exactly what we're talking about here, at the ending of the story, the narrator receives a missive from Mars from his former sweetheart. George, came the sweet, faraway voice. I loved you, but you were so suspicious and jealous that I accepted the companionship of Martel, the Martian. Hoping to bring you to your senses, I did not know what an agency for evil he had established upon the earth. Forgive me, dear. She says more, and then she evaporates. Martel's face shows up in the vision, and that's it. That's the last we hear.
And he's literally like this, not literal mustache twirling villain, but like, and honestly, Asa, that was one of the things that disappointed me most about this story.
Was that
I
Martell did end up being a mustache face villain?
Mhm. And that the punch to the heart that came, maybe it wasn't that strong. There's other stories we've read that have actually punched me in the heart, like The Comet by
Yeah.
W.E.B. Du Bois. So this story, not hey Kashiki, this story not so much of an emotional punch, but it made me really upset. I had some feelings
Hmm.
when at the end of all of this, after our main character has manipulated and just been nasty. Yes, thumbs up. Manipulated, been nasty to people. He broke into Martel's apartment. He's using his stuff and he's doing it under false, like, I don't know, false bravery, false nobility.
Yeah, he's just
And then
jealous.
he's just a jerk and he's not being a good person. The second he gets to talk to Margaret, he talks over her. He interrupts her immediately. He gets put in this mental institution and like he kind of deserved it. Um, but then at the end, it turns out Margaret is apologizing to him,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
no,
like
yeah.
it's like this, it's like people who do something big and dramatic and they're like, well, I'll run away and you'll never see me again. And they have this vision of like everyone in their life who's ever been mean to them, like, no, please come back, we love you, no, we didn't mean it, please come back, we're so sorry, oh, it's too late. It felt like it felt like that kind of fantasy thing. And it's like, does he deserve to have Margaret, who did, in my opinion, who did nothing wrong, um,
Nothing wrong. She was
nothing
always a
wrong.
class act. I mean, that's what he said.
Yeah. She dated a
She said,
guy.
yeah. I okay. Well, you did get some wheels turning that hadn't
Okay.
turned earlier in this
Okay.
conversation when you said that this person, this narrator, George Gregory, had no other folks in his life. The only person he can reach out to when he's in jail is the only other character mentioned besides the love interest, the professor. So always the reading that's always on the table is he just insane? Like, is this all in his head? Is this just
Mm.
jealousy gone way wrong, where not only are you misreading cues socially and so on, you have determined that your romantic rival is an alien? Is that a plausible reading here? I think that the question, I don't know that it is, because it seems like the disappearance of the two ships, the Poseidonia, and before that, the other ship,
The Pegasus, I
the
believe.
Pegasus, and the removal of the water from the oceans, those seem to be reported as facts, or those seem to exist as facts because they come from sources outside, they come from the papers.
But to your point,
Yeah,
there aren't any other characters to verify. Like, so he could
true.
be sitting in the mental and maybe he was there the whole time. And again, maybe we're reading things into this, but like it's very possible since there's and that's the interesting factor of a character in almost complete isolation. He is in an echo chamber. He is in his own, like he could be making this up. Like, because what are the chances? And I know this is science fiction, what are the chances that Margaret, would have been on the ship that got sucked up by the water vacuumers? And I don't know. So I think it's a
Yeah,
possibility.
because
And
and
I
also
think,
it's just like,
yeah,
why did Martell sit by him? Slash, why did he sit by Martell? Why are these two dudes roomies?
yeah,
Basically,
yeah.
I was trying to imagine this like flop house or whatever it was. Why were they? I mean, the story gives us no. It sets up the idea that Martell needs something from George, but there's
Yes.
no payoff there,
Right.
which suggests that maybe Martell is an invention of George.
Yeah. Or Martel's just a normal guy who maybe he was looking for a place to live and got the name of this flop house from Professor Stearns. Like, oh yeah, my good friend George Gregory is staying there. We don't see any of this in the story, but like we can potentially infer that. But it's just all we have is a potentially unreliable narrator
Yes, a
who has
potential.
already shown us that he's like, well, of course I had to check on her safety, when really we know that he's there to like interrupt the date between
Right.
Martell and Margaret.
we do have a source of potential credibility outside of the newspapers. When Stearns comes at the end,
Mm.
he seemingly takes him at face value, seemingly
Let's
takes
talk about that.
seriously. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you keep going.
Well,
Let's
no,
talk
I
about
mean, it's
this.
just that but again, we are limited in how George describes the way he reacted to him telling the story.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find,
So it's page 73.
okay.
Professor Stearns comes and visits George Gregory in the mental institution.
Yes. Okay. Right. Right. So he shares his conclusions that there's a Martian spy. Stupendous, gasped Professor Stearns. Something must be done to prevent another raid. Let's see, he mused. The interval was 3 months before, was it not? 3 months we shall have for bringing again into use the instruments of war. Da, 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 da. I mean, that is presented, I feel like, from an omniscient place.
Maybe it might be.
I think that happens. I mean, the story is POV to some extent, but that doesn't feel POV. That seems like coming from the narrator or the authorial voice. However you say that, yeah,
Right.
which gives credence to what happens, right? So if that's true, then he's not insane. Then this could have happened. If in fact the oceans went down by several feet, which it seems like maybe they did. If in fact these two ships disappeared, and I think maybe this goes to what you're saying, Laura, about it could have been shorter. Like when you say that, and I think about what that might look like, it would look like homing in a little bit tighter on the sci-fi of it all, which is that Mars is losing water, Martians exist,
Mm-hmm.
Martians need water, Martians come to Earth, Martians take water. Like I wonder if that is its enduring power, and I wonder if that's what hit so hard, because the love triangle and the characterization feels generic. Yeah, like serviceable. It feels kind of like what might be written into like a commercial film today, which is to say a film that no one watches 6 years later,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas this vision of Mars in a water crisis, needing water, stealing water, does feel pretty darn compelling, particularly since if this is like one of the first ever depictions of aliens on Earth.
Yeah. I appreciate that very much. And again, I think maybe part of my interest, this is going to sound really snobby. Part of my interest in this story, like the interest that I got out of it, was my brain trying to entertain itself with something that was more than what we were given. So it's like, I could watch any movie and say like, oh, well, but what if it's all in the main character's mind and they're in a mental institution? Like I could do that for anything. And I think maybe I was doing a little bit of that here. And I think you're right that the enduring element here is not the mind-blowing reveal at the end, which was a really disappointing reveal for me. But it's this idea that so many future authors then either create for themselves or build upon if they've read this and were inspired by it. So yeah,
I mean, if we compare this to other early stories, in so many ways, the scientific element, the future forward element, is so much more ambitious.
It is.
If we look at like The Comet, for example, by H.G. Wells, or is it the other Wells?
W.E.B. Du Bois?
Sorry, The Star, rather. The Star. If we look at The Star.
Okay.
The Star by H.G. Wells, and the setup is just you've got Earth and you have a star, a comet, as it were, crossing too close to Earth and everyone gets hurt. I mean, this is just like, okay, someone who knows a basic degree of astronomy, like extrapolating what if astronomy if some crazy stuff happened in the sky, what would be the consequences of that? That's a relatively straightforward, like A to B or A to C in terms of extrapolating possibilities. if you look at Jules Verne, it's like, okay, you have a ship that can go underwater and find stuff. Like that's still kind of like, it doesn't, you don't have to go so far to imagine that. Whereas this is wild. It's a wild scene. It's like there's Mars, there's people living on Mars, there's a water shortage on Mars. They send a spy. And that is like, I could definitely see myself getting blown away by this. If I had just read, like if I'm reading my weekly story in 1920 or whatever.
1927.
Yeah. But I'm trying to figure out when The Star came out.
Oh, I have it. Excuse us while we look for the publication date. 1897.
1897, right. Okay, so let's just pretend that those are in the same year. Although I think that's a really telling thing. It's like back in 1897, it's like, ooh, science fiction. What if a star came close to Earth? 25 years later, no, we need more than that.
Right.
What if there's a planet and there's people living on the planet and those people have problems just like we do, and it's like a spy story?
You know what? I'm gonna elevate something that you said. Not elevate. Uphold. I don't know. Something you said was really good and it really struck me. And it led to me thinking about something else that could be important here. And I'm thinking of this is all very new to me, science fiction, short story wise, but I have seen a lot of science fiction movies, and movies from the 50s feature essentially the BEM, the bug-eyed monster. Was like, you went to the moon and there's a monster on the moon and it wants to smash you. And like, this is so much more complex. Like, this is a political system. This is another culture, similar yet different. So maybe like the nuance there can be appreciated as well. It's not just big bug-eyed monsters like coming down to Earth to like punch you in the face. Like they're doing not surreptitious. What's the right thing? The right word? Espionage. Espionage. They're like doing espionage. So like they've researched Earthlings.
Yes, totally advanced society. It's like there's technology in this little machine. There's a different sort of ecology and geology at work. The description of the land is really vivid in the beginning.
Yeah.
All the things. Yeah, I mean, it's just, maybe this is just the kind of thing where it's like the love triangle could have been cut. You know, maybe this is just like, this story belongs in the anthology because of who wrote it. This story belongs in the anthology because it was ambitious imaginatively in its time. But maybe the love triangle is just kind of whack and should have gone.
Maybe. Yeah. I was very much thinking of like Jack Lemmon, The Apartment kind of vibes. Like,
yeah.
But so, okay. Real quick, I do want to talk about the science in the science fiction.
Yeah.
And one of the things I tend to appreciate, here I go, continuing to look for things to appreciate in this story. I do appreciate science fiction that is speculative in a way that is like prophecy. Like I did notice a few things in here. So I did notice that this is written in 1927. It takes place in 1994 and 1995 over the new year. And so a few things, people have television sets in their homes, which in 1927 would have been unthinkable.
Oh, great point.
So like, and for me, I glazed over that until I was like, wait, when was this written? Because she's predicted something here that did become a norm. She predicted a norm. And so like, we don't think it's strange. We take it for granted, but like people in 1927 would have been listening to radios. Like the whole family would have been gathered around the radio. So a television in your home, kind of a big deal. I wish that I would have circled, he rides on something called the
volplane.
Volplane. What is a volplane?
I don't know, but it's underlined in my book.
He lost no time in speeding his volplane to her home. And I think one of the things I did like about this story, and I'm not looking for things to praise, I'm not looking for reasons why it's valid. I genuinely did think it had very good world building. I think that one of the best ways you can world build, especially in fantasy and in science fiction, where you have a world that's not ours, is drop tiny hints and embed them
Mm,
and don't explain them. And this
yes.
story did a really good job of that. Like she just drops the word volplane like we know what it is. And I think
Yes.
that's very good world building. Maybe I'll talk about that later when we talk about what we learned for our own writing from the story.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
we've been seeing that time and time and time again. Like I've been just talking about this nonstop on my channel. By the way, both Sarah and I have YouTube channels. We're both writers. Lots of other stuff happening on these channels. Sarah has a podcast. Subscribe.
Asa has a
I,
vlog. It's
I've been
amazing.
thinking about this a lot, like what to elide, what
Mm,
to take out that is a gift to the reader to use their imagination. And
yes.
you can't take out too much.
Yes.
You can't put in too many words like volplane. Otherwise, we start to disconnect from the narrative.
Yeah.
But yeah, touches of that, touches of things that we don't understand, touches of things that go in unexplained, enrich and world build.
Really works. It really works. There
Yeah.
was one other thing that I thought was extremely interesting, and this goes along with the science. They reinvented the calendar. Can we talk about this?
Okay, yeah, we can, Sarah, because yeah, that was wild. That was a wild.
for for this short story about a love triangle and Martians sucking water off of Earth, the author put in this detail that, oh hey, by the way, we now have 13 months with a singular New Year's Day between the 13 months. And the story happens over this New Year's, the end by. And it's like, hey,
Do you know where
okay,
that is, Sarah?
yeah, I do.
Can you direct us?
I had a I had a lot of thoughts. New calendar 60, page 65.
Okay,
I'm just, if I may, I might
you
just
may
read this off
read
here.
us.
It was New Year's Day, not January 1st, as they had it in the old days, you readers in 1927, but the extra New Year's Day that was sandwiched as a separate entity between 2 years. This new chronological reckoning had been put into use in 1938. The calendar had previously contained 12 months varying in length from 28 to 31 days, but with the addition of a new month and the adoption of a uniformity of 28 days for all months and the interpolation of an isolated New Year's Day, the world's system of chronology was greatly simplified. And then he goes on, it was, as I say, on New Year's Day that I arose later than usual and got dressed. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I gotta say that I had to be reminded that this was the future. Like so much of the story felt like it could be happening in the present of the story.
mm-hmm,
The
in
housing,
1927.
yeah, 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 or even like a version of today. Just and so yeah, it almost felt like shoehorned or
Uh-huh.
something that happened in rewriting where it's like, oh wait, I got to remind everybody we're in the future, so I got to throw in some words like volplane. I mean, right? Like we don't get this story doesn't tell us when it's being told at the
It
time
does
of
say
no,
1990.
but
Oh,
where
when
I'm
it's
going with it,
told. That's right.
yeah, no. I'm saying like
You're
we don't
right.
learn that until the second chapter.
Well, and then even then he's talking from the past. Like he's talking about a past version of himself in 1994. So like
Right.
you're right. This is being told in 2000 something.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's such an interesting point that you bring up about this feeling like the 1920s. Like I read
Mhm.
this and it feels like a product of its time, even though it's supposed to take place in the future. It reminds me like when I'm watching or when I'm reading a novel, like when I read The Caves of Steel, it's like, yes, he put on his pork pie hat and he went outside and he got on the, it's like,
Right.
yeah, this is 1950s. I know it's supposed to be whatever, but this is 1950s. It feels like the 50s. I watch, a science fiction movie from the 80s and there's like, chunky CPUs and like it's like that's the 80s. Yeah, that's you watch something from the 90s, you watch Galaxy Quest, or maybe that was 2000, but like it feels like exactly the time it was made, even though it's maybe supposed to be in the future. And I think that's something really, I think it's something that's really charming about science fiction is like they're trying so hard. They're trying so hard to put this in a different time, but the time still leaves its hallmarks
Yeah,
on the movie,
yeah,
on the story,
yeah,
on the language. Like
yeah.
you just know.
Well, coming up in this collection is someone I've been reading recently, Ted
Ooh,
Chiang, who
yes.
I feel like does a marvelous job of really does feel like the future in this like organic, natural way. I take issue with his stories in a more macro sense, but I still really appreciate them. We'll get to that,
Oh,
but I know he's in the collection.
he is, and I'm
So
curious
he
to
is
hear
coming
more on your
up.
thoughts.
He's coming up. I mean, they're just so elegant, but I feel like they land at these ideas in this way that is feels too conte philosophique para me.
Oh,
Like it's just too like it's like okay, that was a beautiful idea, elegantly expressed, but at the end of the day, this story is a conveyance for
right.
an
I want a
ideal.
story.
It's not. I'm not having like a visceral experience. That's my experience, but I still like. Wow, he does that so well that I want to read those. But Ted Chiang for another day, y'all. As
Yeah.
always, the essential question for Sarah and I and for the floor. What are you going to use in your own writing that you took from this story? Or what are you not going to use? Or,
You
just engage with that question. Can
do you
this
want to go
improve your
first?
writing? How? Woo!
You want to be in the hot seat?
I like that. Just like the mirror. What? I mean, I guess for me, this story felt, and we haven't even talked about this, this story felt farcical at times. Like, I just,
Well,
there were
do you
like,
want to talk about that real quick?
yeah, sure, let's talk about that. Like, there were just kind of moments where it was like preposterous. There's one point, okay, this is coming from the love interest, the woman. She's speaking to George, the narrator. I think you must be mistaken, she replied curtly. Mr. Martell praises your qualities as a neighbor and comments not infrequently on your excellent virtue of attending strictly to your own business. The inclusion of this like hyper specific mention of like etiquette and manners, that sentence in of itself doesn't sound, or that piece of dialogue doesn't sound insane, but in context of the story that it's in, it felt so goofy.
Uh-huh.
And I felt that way like frequently in this story. Like his sense of outrage is comic, or that was
Yes.
my experience of it. And so for me, I mean, it's more of like instead of any kind of particular or device or technique, as an artist, writer, it just again reminds me, it's like, dude, you were so serious and you don't have to be.
Yeah.
And you can really just like absurdism, appreciating humor, appreciating characters that are just like, because so many people are like this in real life where they're just so out of touch. And it's just kind of like a story like this reminds me that I need to be expansive when thinking about the types of people I'm trying to represent
Mm.
and the types of traits that people have. Not so much like getting beyond my own experience. While that is important, I just think even in a more like thinking about my like tertiary characters, just like let's like loop
Yeah.
in a little bit of a broader cross section of human experience, which includes these like zany jerks,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, you wouldn't see this today. Like, and I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh, kids these days. But I've noticed a shift that very, very there's a de-emphasis on main characters having flaws. I don't know if this is as true as it is
Mm.
in short fiction as it is. I've definitely noticed it in long form fiction. I also read a lot of YA novels. I just read a lot of things. And I've really noticed that characters aren't having character arcs so much as they are starting off as idealized forms
Mm.
and having adventures. And so I don't know. I think that's such an interesting point, and it's definitely something we need to keep experimenting with is these like weird, flawed, upsetting characters. I think that I
Well,
don't
and
know.
that's yeah. I'm glad you said the word arc because that's what we're seeing in a lot of these stories is that the character that there isn't an arc.
Yeah.
That whatever arc is happening is not necessarily a character arc. I think that's particularly true of these sci-fi stories that the arc is more plot-y or kind of story-y. It's like there's a beginning, middle, end, but like the character's not necessarily changing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree with that very much. Do
Yeah.
you give short stories a little bit more of a pass on not having a full character arc, or do you think it kind of should still be there to keep you interested in the story?
I think definitely I give it a pass. And yeah, this is just like an evolution in my own taste where I'm putting far less premium on characters.
Mm,
Just because I can just feel like you can see through them so often that, like, you know, and obviously this is more true with commercial narratives, whether it's books or movies or whatever, but like the sort of save the cat idea of like the
mm,
shard of glass flaw that they start the movie with. And I think young adult is its own thing where it's just like, this is a young person that a young person can map themselves onto and have adventures. But in more traditional kind of
that's a good
dramas
point.
or novels, it's like, there's the flaw. And it's like, I don't know. It just seems, I can see the blueprint, I feel, too often. And so
Hmm.
I think that I kind of care less and less and less about character and a more I'm looking for a more like holistic experience of a piece of art that just sort of I'm not necessarily tracking a human. I'm just like
Totally.
vibes, language,
Experience.
evocation,
Yeah. Oh,
you know.
totally.
Yeah. So I mean that's and I think short stories definitely get a pass because it's like, yeah, the story if we don't want to spend an hour with this character, and I guess this story takes like 40 minutes to read and that already feels like too long. So I
That's a
think
long time.
that, yeah, I mean, like Anna Karenina, like you go on a journey with those characters and they are transformed. And but Tolstoy, he knew what he was doing. And so anyway, yeah, I mean, I think the short story you can really get away with not, and I think that's cool because it's like, what else is going on here? I mean, that said, I do like short stories where a character has like a before and after moment, which is not necessarily like an arc, but
Mm.
this is in an inflection point in their life.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like their life, and this is like a place where it's like, choop, choop, and it's like they face a different direction after this story. But it's
Yeah.
not really an arc, it's more of just like
Right. It's
this thing that happens,
little, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
An
right.
arc has more like little points to round it out, and this is just a little 3-point A, B, C kind of
Right,
personality adjustment. Yeah.
right.
Interesting. Ah, yeah. So back to your original question for the story. Did this story make you feel something? And was that something boredom?
Boredom's not right. It's more like frustration, I think. It's more
Mm,
like frustration in that like this this is such severe language and I am just not a hater when it comes to art making because it is so hard to make anything. It is so hard to finish anything.
yeah.
Failures are successes if you make something. I believe that. But I felt like my time was being wasted in that
Mm,
I was like, I know that this is The Martian. So now I am just spending time reading these pages, waiting for you to tell me that it's The Martian, and me being like, yeah, I know, you know, while doing my best to do the sort of mental gymnastics of being like, okay, maybe they mean, maybe I'm supposed to know it's a Martian. So let me engage with this story knowing that. But there was
right.
that I wasn't able, at least, to find a compelling line as a reader. Does that make sense?
It
Like,
makes perfect
if
sense.
that,
Yes.
yeah.
There wasn't
So,
anything else to like hold on to like grab onto, to like pull you through the narrative.
yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, I think that to the extent that I laughed a few times,
Did
maybe
you?
not out loud, but like just like moments of like the preposterousness was that kind of gave me a bit of a feeling as a reader, you know. Should we talk about tomorrow?
I think we should. Let's talk about tomorrow.
Talk
I
about
would
tomorrow.
normally at this point hold up my book, but it's on the floor and I'm
I
not
got mine.
supposed to bend or twist. So, or
Okay.
this way, this way.
Yeah, right. So this is the Other Story Club. that Sarah and I do every week. This is called The Dark Descent. This is an anthology of horror short stories. So on Wednesday, we talk about science fiction short stories. On Thursdays, we are working our way story by story, one story a week through this collection. And tomorrow, same time, 4 p.m. EST, we are discussing the classic, Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne. All right, here's the first sentence for good measure. Young Goodman Brown came forth at sunset into the street at Salem Village, but put back his head after crossing the threshold to exchange a parting kiss with his young wife. It's allegorical. It's weirder than it seems. George Saunders Story Club, they recently read this. I read his takes on this, which I'll share tomorrow, some of them. He dug in ways that I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So surprises coming tomorrow. And additionally, want to announce that Sarah and I are really going to kind of try to do a spooky season sprint the next few weeks. Going to try to, speaking of arcs, create some kind of through line for the next 4 Friday live writing sessions where we'll sort of engage with some kind of tips, tricks, techniques, basics of horror writing, see what we can come up with, find some great submission opportunities. So stay tuned for that. And that will also be the same time for EST the next 4 Fridays, including the day after tomorrow.
I'm very excited. Very excited. Yeah. I love this. Halloween, October has some of my favorite media surrounding it. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people. So I think this is going to be a really fun season to go through.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Anything from anyone on the floor? Questions, comments, concerns?
And even if you're not here with us live, we do check comments for these videos. So go ahead. If you've read The Fate of the Poseidonia, which almost seems the titular craft, it sort of got like sidelined in its own story. But if you've read it, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to engage with you there. We also have a Discord that we would love for you to join. We talk about stories there. There's been people have been sharing their writing, and it's been really cool. So I'm going to there should be a link in the description for this video. If you would like to join our Discord, we encourage you to do that.
Yeah, I'll put one in here as well right now. The Discord is really where you stay up on it all and dig deeper. Lore Huntress, that's so exciting. Looking forward to Friday. Yeah, so are we.
We are too. Yes. And I don't know if you want me to mention that if you want the story read to you.
Oh, yeah. If you want to listen to Young Goodman Brown, I read it on the channel yesterday. So if you go to my channel page, I read it. There's a nice little rain in the background.
It was very atmospheric. It had like gentle thunder. It was very absorbing.
Yeah. If you like being read to, I think it came out okay. And yeah, so in any event, we'll see you tomorrow, everyone.
All right, friends. Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.